Okay, we're just about ready to go. So thank you for being here once again. The last hour of the last week, we're going to wrap up Quest with the Last Battle. So we load that PowerPoint presentation. This is the award-winning story in the series. Actually, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was a bestseller among the 7. But it wasn't until this one was published that Lewis actually won an award for the best children's book of the year in 1956. So the Carnegie Medal, named in honor of Andrew Carnegie, the Scottish philanthropist. So had children's stories been as well received in 1950 when The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was published as they were in 1956 because of the revolution that he and Tolkien were accomplishing, he probably would have won a similar award much, much earlier than he did. But at least he won it. So here's a modern cover of The Last Battle, and here is the original. Clicked it. Okay, there we go. I think I like the modern one. Anyway, there's a lot to be said about a good graphic artist. So not only does the term The Last Battle become the title of the last Chronicle of Narnia, it is also the title of the last chapter in the story of King Arthur, in the book King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table. And Lewis draws on the stories of Sir Thomas Malory in these King Arthur stories in different places throughout the sequence. In fact, at the end of King Arthur's life, he throws a sword into a lake, and it ends up sticking by its point with the hilt sticking out of it. And if any of you have read The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, that's what Reepicheep does with his sword as he's heading into Aslan's country. He tosses his sword, and the very same thing happens to his sword. It's also the second book in Cornelius Ryan's World War II trilogy, the title of Ralph Wetterhahn's book on the Vietnam War, probably many other books, poems, chapters, excerpts, etc., that use this phrase, the last battle. So in chapter 12, through the stable door, near the end of the sequence, and then the last battle of the last king of Narnia began. That means this story is appropriately the end of the world, the end of Narnia, so to speak, as the series comes to an end. Some of the reviews of The Last Battle and also this sequence of 7 books, Chad Walsh, the very first biographer of Lewis, said this is one of the best. Christian symbolism is clear enough, but the book can stand on its own feet as a deeply moving and hauntingly lovely story apart from the doctrinal content. HPM, whoever that was, those initials, says it is the culmination of an excellent series, and boys and girls who have loved the other books will find it very satisfying. Paul Karkanen, Lewis's description of the Narnian last days is brilliant in its conception, dazzling in its execution, achingly beautiful, unspeakably sad, and gloriously hopeful. One of the main characters in the story, Farsight the Eagle, there, according to Pauline Baines. For the entire series, Edmund Fuller, the series known as the Chronicles of Narnia, I believe to be the finest group of stories for children, Christian in theme, written in our times. Charles Brady, the greatest addition to the imperishable deposit of children's literature since the Jungle Books of Rudyard Kipling. Narnia takes its place forever now beside the jasper-lucent landscapes of Carroll, creator of Alice in Wonderland, Anderson, MacDonald, and Kipling. The child will not respond to these values at once, though they will awaken in his memory when the time comes for full realization. He will respond immediately, however, to the narrative sweep, to the evocation of the heroic mood, to the constant eliciting of the numinous, read spiritual. Very possibly this latter service is the most startling one Lewis renders contemporary childhood. He touches the nerve of religious awe on almost every page. He evangelizes through the imagination. So, a few preliminaries. Shift. Anybody read George Orwell's novel, The Animal Farm? Shift is a lot like Napoleon the pig and the leading farm animal. Shift is actually a good name for a shifty kind of character, right? Who is too good, too clever for his own britches. Aslan, the phrase, is not a tame lion. We think that that's mostly associated with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but only appears once in that book, whereas in this book it appears 8 times. But usually as a ruse to try to convince people that this Aslan, which is a fake Aslan early on in the story, is doing some surprising things because, of course, Aslan is not a tame lion. So let's get into the plot. The ape, Shift, and the donkey, whose name is Puzzle, not the brightest creature that ever adorned the hills and valleys of Narnia, lived near Cauldron Pool, not far from the Western Wild. One day a lion's skin floats down to them. Apparently a lion shot by a hunter upstream, skinned and then lost the skin, and it floated downstream. Shift decides that Puzzle should wear that skin and pretend to be Aslan, because there are a lot of things that Shift would like to see happen that would be different in Narnia from the way things are. There aren't enough bananas, for one thing, in Narnia, and he wants to fix that problem. So there you have Puzzle wearing this lion skin. It doesn't fit real well. Shift has to do a little bit of sewing in order to make it fit. King Tyrion, in the meantime, is enjoying his summer cottage in the company of Jewel, the unicorn. They've heard reports of Aslan having returned to Narnia, but it's only Shift and Puzzle doing their thing. Runewit the centaur brings bad news from his reading of the stars. So even though they're hearing reports that Aslan is back, and that would be good news, centaurs can read the stars, and the stars never lie. So Runewit warns the king that this isn't something that we ought to be happy about, because there's something bad that's on its way. And by the way, Puzzle is a reluctant participant in Shift's plan. So he's really relatively innocent, even though he probably should have put his foot down and refused to participate in this. The dryads are dying. Dryads are tree spirits, because the Calamines have come into Narnia and are cutting down trees, and when the tree gets cut down, the dryad dies, and they're sending these trees downstream to do some building for the Calamine Empire. Talking horses are being enslaved. That's not supposed to happen either. And here is a picture of Tyrion and Jewel having just killed 2 Calamines who have been whipping these talking horses who are working as hard as they can. And they fell upon these 2 Calamines, killed them without giving them any kind of a warning, and they feel bad about that. That's not the way a Knight of the Round Table operates, and so they give themselves up as 2 other Calamines come rushing in from the distance. So they are brought before Aslan. That's in quotation marks. It's Puzzle wearing Aslan's, wearing a lion's skin. Shift says that Aslan and Tash are the same. Tash is the horrible god of the Calamines. Aslan, of course, is the deity of Narnia. Aslan is the true god. Tash is the demon. While bound in ropes, Tyrion calls to the children from another world and asks for their help. And Aslan sends Jilpol and Eustace Scrub. They come, they find Tyrion, and they let loose his bonds and make their way out of the place that's known as Stable Hill. Tyrion leads them to a guard tower where they have some food and some weapons stashed there, and so they're able to arm themselves. They head for Stable Hill to rescue Jewel, the unicorn, and they accomplish that. Jill also rescues Puzzle from the stable, and they think that now we have squashed the plot of the ape, because we'll simply expose his plot. This was really only Puzzle wearing the lion skin, and Shift won't be able to continue his plot. So Tyrion also frees a group of dwarfs who were heading to the salt mines of the Tisroc, the head of the Calamine nation. And Pagan the dwarf is the only one in that group of dwarfs that decides to join Jill and Eustace and the king and Jewel. While they're heading towards Stable Hill, they notice Tash. They see this demon that looks like a huge bird with a big beak and claws and 6 arms and legs, and they see what they didn't think the Tash actually existed, but he does, and they saw him in the distance heading towards Narnia. They learn that Ginger the cat, who is one of the talking animals in Narnia, and Rishta Tarkan, the Calamine, are using Shift. Shift is the front man, but the real shrewdness is behind the scenes, that Ginger and the head Calamine are in cahoots to make Shift do their bidding, but they're calling all the shots. There we go. Farsight the eagle, I don't know how that happened, but brings the news that Cair Paravel has fallen. The castle of Narnia has been captured by the Calamines. Runwit the centaur is dead, and Narnia is now under the thumb of the Calamine nation, which Calormen had always wanted to do, and now they're able to accomplish thanks to Shift, Ginger, and Rishta Tarkan. So I brought this picture along. The Lewis brothers lived in a house in Oxford, the Headington Quarry area, an east central suburb of Oxford known as the Kilns. And they lived there for, Jack lived there, C.S. Lewis lived there for 33 years. Warren Lewis lived there for about 43 years, from about 1930 till their respective deaths. And the house has been bought by the C.S. Lewis Foundation out of Redlands, California, and remodeled, refurbished, trying to restore it to the way it was when the Lewis brothers lived there. And these are a couple of photographs from maids that worked at the kilns. This is actually a picture of Fred Paxford with one of the many family pets, a cat by the name of Ginger. As Fred Paxford became the model for Puddleglum and the Silver Chair, so Ginger, you know about cats, right? They have a mind of their own, and they might let you pet them if they're in a good mood that day. So, that night there's a bonfire burning at the stable. Shift announces that a donkey is running around as Aslan and should be stopped. And so what the good guys thought was going to be foiling the plot of Shift. Shift is smart enough to figure out how to get around that problem. And so you have Puzzle hiding behind the stable, and now they can't expose Shift's plot whatsoever. Shift states that Aslan is no longer going to come out of the stable, which he used to do at nighttime, because you wouldn't be able to tell that it was a donkey with a lion skin on if it was a little bit dark and difficult to see, but you could see that it was a lion skin, and maybe it was Aslan the lion. So anybody that wants to go in and see Aslan can do it, but Aslan's not coming out to them. Of course, inside the stable is a Calamine soldier or two with a scimitar, a sword, ready to kill anybody that comes through the door that isn't on the bad guy's side. So Ginger volunteers to go into the stable because she's in cahoots with Rishta Targan, and the guy inside knows that it's a cat and that this is one of their team, so the soldier inside isn't going to kill the cat. Ginger comes out like a streak of lightning, scared, stiff, and has lost the ability to speak, because there's something that surprised Ginger inside there. And of course, Aslan had told in The Magician's Nephew, we saw in the first hour, that if you are violating the terms with which Aslan has created Narnia, you as a talking animal might lose that ability, and so Ginger does. There's also a young Calamine soldier who's a rather noble character in the Calamine army. His name is Emeth, and he enters Stable Hill, which was also an unexpected event, because none of the Calamine soldiers are supposed to come in, because the guy inside is going to kill somebody that's not on his side, and he was surprised. A Calamine soldier is thrown out, dead. Happens not to be Emeth. Happens to have been the guy inside the door that was going to kill anybody that wasn't on the Calamine side. Tyrion and the other 6 who had been hiding step out to fight, because there are more Calamines coming into Narnia by the hour, and they need to fight and win the battle before they are so hugely outnumbered that there's no chance of them to win. So Tyrion, the dogs, Eustace, Jill, Jewel, Pagan the dwarf, and here's a slight aside about Emeth. So he's the name of this Calamine soldier who was noble and virtuous and a really, really good guy. Emeth is English characters for the Hebrew word for truth. And there you have what the word actually that's backwards, isn't it? That's from left to right. We have the same problem with I didn't cut and paste this. So that when it got transferred into the new software. But anyway, probably, if I hadn't told you that, most of you would have known. Right? Alex would have known, Travis would have known, yeah, but anyway. So those are the same three Hebrew consonants for the word truth. And in fact, in this story, the word true appears 22 times, truth 11 times, truly 5 times. So this is a big theme in the story. What is the truth of the story? So how does this play out in the book? Is Aslan truly in the stable? Is Tash really Aslan? This is confusing the people of Narnia to equate the evil god of Calamine with the good god of Narnia. And what is, if Aslan isn't in the stable, what truly is inside there? Does Emeth serve Aslan or Tash? And a few other things as well. So the plot continues. Tyrion grabs a hold of the 8th shift, because Shift's one of the bad guys, and tosses him into the stable, and a battle ensues outside the stable. Won't give you all the details of it. The dogs come to Tyrion's side. The dwarfs decide to remain neutral, even though they could have tilted the battle in favor of the true Narnians. Calamines begin one by one to force the Tyrion and his company towards the stable and throwing them one by one into the stable so that the Calamine soldier on the inside can kill them. Tyrion grabs Rishta Tarkin, the leader of the Calamines, and pulls him into the stable, and Tash has actually shown up in the narrative inside the stable door, and he grabs Rishta Tarkin under one of his many arms, and he walks off with Rishta Tarkin as his rightful prey. And then Tyrion looks around and he sees all the past kings and queens of Narnia looking young again. They are inside the stable, which is a building smaller than this room. And yet, once they go inside the stable, it looks like they're standing in an open countryside, able to look hundreds and hundreds of yards into the distance in every direction. So what it looks like from the outside is a stable, small building. From the inside is actually bigger than the outside, believe it or not. Peter and Diggory describe being in a train crash. Get my words right. Not a plane crash, but a train crash, which sent them into Narnia. Peter describes the door through which Tyrion came through with Rishta. And it was a door in the middle of nothing. Once you're inside the stable, that's what you see. You can look through the crack in the door and see the bonfire going on the outside, all the creatures lined up around the outside, some Calamine soldiers and so on. It's nighttime out there, but from the inside, it's daylight, it's sunshine, the countryside stretches a long distance in every direction, and you get this door standing right in the middle. So it's really creative, a way of expressing the inside and the outside of the stable. And Lewis makes this comment that the stable's inside is bigger than its outside. I'm trying to advance this. Continue the plot. Maybe the battery is running out. So the dwarfs, who are not really on the good guy's side, they're not really on the bad guy's side. They think they're inside a dark hole. Everybody else thinks they're in the sunshine of the countryside. Aslan arrives. The dwarfs, their famous statement is saying the dwarfs are for the dwarfs. Aslan says of the dwarfs, just like he said about Uncle Andrew, only in slightly different language, their prison is only in their own minds, yet they are in that prison and so afraid of being taken in that they cannot be taken out. So they don't want to be fooled, but they also can't see the reality that's in front of them. What is truly inside the stable? Remember that issue of truth? Plot continues. Another one of Pauline Bain's beautiful drawings. So the door is now open. Father Time brings an end to Narnia as he sounds a horn. All of the creatures in Narnia come towards Aslan, who is standing in the doorway. So you can see him right here, the edge of the doorway. Some go to his right into Narnia through the doorway, and the others go to his left and disappear. Does that remind you of anything in the latter chapters of Matthew's Gospel? And in the stable, Emeth, this Calamine soldier, virtuous soldier, appears. So there he is. Aslan tells Emeth, all the service I was done to Tasha I count as service done to me. They discover they're in a new, more beautiful, more colorful Narnia. The old Narnia, they are told, was only a shadow or a copy of the real Narnia, hence the idea of Shadowlands showing up once again. And the watchword is to go further up and further into the center of Narnia. They head towards the lamppost in the western wild. And the book draws to an end. And this is one of the fabulous things about the book. Even though it's dark in the early parts of the story, for most of the story, the conclusion of the story is this paragraph. And for us, this is the end of all stories, and we can most truly say that they all lived happily ever after. But for them, it was only the beginning of the real story. All their life in this world and all their adventures in Narnia had only been to cover the title page. Now at last they were beginning chapter 1 of the great story, which no one on earth has read, which goes on forever, in which every chapter is better than the one before. Good description of eternity, it seems to me. So, first biblical theme, seeing is believing, or seeing it. For the dwarfs, even freshly picked flowers that are held in front of their noses while they think they're in the dark smell like filthy stable litter. They keep saying the dwarfs are for the dwarfs, which is kind of, I mean, I'm for me. I'm all about me. That sounds rather selfish if we were to say that, right? So that's what they're saying. You can't take us in. You can't fool us. So let's see what the scriptures have to say in Romans and 2 different chapters in John. So I'll look for a volunteer. You think it was the battery? Let's try backing up. Yeah, it was. So one person to do Romans 1. Just give me your hand. You're going to do that one. No? Oh, somebody likes the book of Romans. Okay, try. Good. John 1. Another volunteer. You got it? Okay, and John 3, 18, 19. Somebody else? Okay. Let's go with Romans 1.
For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For this invisible attributes, namely His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world, in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor Him as God or give thanks to Him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were dark.
So let's stop there. And what did you hear from Romans 1 about the human condition?
Well, we don't honor God because we're sinful by nature, so we don't honor Him. We don't give thanks. We're selfish.
But we have a good excuse for not doing that, right? You can let the dwarfs off, you can let me off. Of course,
Yeah.
I couldn't have known better because of the way I was brought up. It's not my fault. My parents forced me to go when I was a child, so therefore when I have grown up, I don't go to church because they rammed it down my throat, right? So we got all kinds of excuses we can use that God's going to say, oh yeah, well, if I had to live like that, I would have done what you did, so you can come into heaven anyway, right? Not really. Okay. How about John chapter 1, verses 4, 9, and 10?
In Him was life, and that life was light of men. The true light that gives light to every man was coming into the world. He was in the world, and through the world was made through Him. The world did not recognize Him.
So what do we need in order to be able to see things as they truly are? Light, especially light as it is personified in the light of the world, the one who said, I am the light of the world, and the one that John testifies to in the first chapter. Anything else on that, reflective of the first chapter of John? Then let's go to John 3, 18 and 19.
Whoever believes in Him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only Son of God. And this is the judgment. The light has come into the world, and people love the darkness rather than the light, because their works were evil.
Thoughts on that verse? What did you hear? Yeah.
Well, I think of Emmett, the character that didn't believe in Aslan, yet was still allowed into the true Narnia.
Was attracted by light.
Was attracted to truth. Right?
Yeah. His name was Truth. That's not a coincidence. Very, very much the case. Yeah, very good. And some people love darkness. I mean, that doesn't allow us to have a problem trying to converse with somebody, share our faith with somebody, and they reject it, and to conclude, well, that must be one of those people that loves darkness and is predestined to eternal damnation or something like that. So we don't get to do that, that's for sure. Any other thoughts on Romans 1 or John 1 or John 3? So there's a final judgment scene that's happening in the last battle, very much like the biblical final judgment scene that Jesus describes with the separating the sheep from the goats. Biblical theme number 2, further up and further in. Who do you recognize there on the screen? You see who that is? There's Reepicheep. He's actually one of the characters towards the end of the story as they go further up and further in, who comes out of that garden that's on the top of that green hill that Polly and Diggory had flown to on the back of Fledge, and he welcomes them to Aslan's country. So, as they are heading towards this green hill, they run at top speed and they don't get the least bit tired. Anybody ever run track in high school or college? Yeah. Never get tired? Narnia, you don't get tired, yeah. They actually swim up a waterfall. Kind of mind-boggling, but you know, Lewis can put into words whatever he wants to imagine. Reepicheep says, welcome in the lion's name. The unicorn says, I've come home at last. So we have 3 verses, John 14, Matthew 25, and Revelation 21, to delve into this biblical theme for just a few moments. John 14, who's going to take that passage? Volunteer? Raise a hand. Okay, right here. Matthew 25. Right there. And then, right, you want to take Revelation 21?
Just give me a second. Just go there. Okay, John 14:2. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that? I go to prepare a place for you.
Comments? What do you hear? In Jesus' words in John 14. Does anybody know when he said those words? Yeah, it was at the Last Supper. It's Maundy Thursday. Okay, and he knew he was going to the cross, and he was going to prepare a place for them as he has for us as well. Matthew 25:21.
His master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness."
And you hear there what kinds of ideas?
Someone was given a job to do and doing it well.
Somebody is patted on the back for having used the gifts, talents that God gave him while he was here on this earth, not as a way of earning his way to heaven, but as a way of simply reflecting the gifts that God has given to that individual. And Revelation 21, 1, 3, and 4.
Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Now the dwelling of God is with men, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. And he will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away."
Powerful picture of heaven. Is anybody who's read The Last Battle able to tell us what they saw when characters inside the stable looked through the crack in the door after the two groups had been separated? The one group came into Narnia, the other group went to the left, and they look out and what are they seeing happening? Narnia is being swallowed up, it's disappearing, it's coming to an end, and now there is only left the real Narnia, of which the Narnia of the first 6.5 stories had been a copy, not nearly as good as the ultimate thing. So we are living on earth, and one day there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. So that the heaven that we have the privilege of enjoying and participating is going to have some earthly features to it. There are going to be some things that we recognize, some people that we recognize, but best of all, what did Chris read about how heaven is going to be like, which would undoubtedly be what Lewis would say Narnia was like. What's going to be missing? Yeah, no tears.
No tears, yes, no pain.
No pain, no death, and the presence of God is going to be right there in our midst. Our God's dwelling is with us. It happened at a particular point in history for 35 or so years when God came in the person of Jesus. In eternity, it's going to be a permanent dwelling of God with mankind. Any other comments about any of these verses as the Chronicles of Narnia come to an end? The Chronicles of Narnia are set in a medieval world. Tyrion says, "But to leap on them unawares without defying them while they were unarmed, faw." That's a medieval word. "We are two murderers, Jewel. I am dishonored forever." Worked for a while. The castles, like Cair Paravel and the one in Archenland, modes of transportation, there are no motorized vehicles. The clothing is from the Middle Ages. The weaponry, the cosmology, the customs, the astronomy, the reading of the stars like Brunwitt did, the type of education, the manner of speech, and even the practice of chivalry are all from the Middle Ages. Lewis was notorious for not liking the development of the machine. He probably wouldn't be watching this presentation online if we were live today. He never really learned how to drive an automobile. In fact, a few years ago when my wife and I were in Oxford, had the privilege of meeting Priscilla Tolkien, the daughter, youngest child of J.R. Tolkien. She was just as down on automobiles as her father had been and C.S. Lewis had been, and how the automobile factory that came into one of the Oxford suburbs had ruined that city forever. So, but anyway, he loved a lot of things about the Middle Ages and reflects that in the Chronicles of Narnia. Okay, another little bit of language. Where, the word appears 3 times in the book, and it comes from the word beware, and it's just a short form of the same word. So beware comes from 2 words, be wary, which comes from the 14th century Middle English bin ware. This in turn derived from the Old English Anglo-Saxon warian, to guard against, beware, protect, defend. Even related to the word ward, like so-and-so is a warden of the state. So war, not the battle kind of war, but war in the sense of wary. That's what that word means. And so here's another one of those little linguistic nuggets that Lewis puts in here that most of us don't know as we read through the series. A few quotations from the book. As soon as Tyrion saw that Jill, was the best pathfinder of the 3 of them, he put her in front as they're making their way back to Stable Hill. So Jill is the leader of the 3 of them, with Eustace, Tyrion, and Jill. The dwarfs, for the dwarfs, we saw that as a representation of sheer self-centeredness. The dwarfs were so afraid of being taken in that they could not be taken out. We saw that one already. Lucy makes this statement. In our world, too, a stable once had something inside it that was bigger than our whole world. Right? We all know that's referring to Jesus, of course. This one I put in here because during the Second World War, Warren Lewis was called up to serve in the army, but C.S. Lewis, Jack Lewis, was not, but he volunteered with the local defense volunteers, and he took a watchman's position every Saturday morning for a couple of years between 1:30 and 4:30 a.m. And so he knew what part of the night was really cold from personal experience. And so as Tyrion, Eustace, and Jill get to the tower, he writes it was at the coldest hour of the night, just before dawn, and they got back to the tower. A little bit about Susan. At the end of the story, 7 kings and queens appear in Narnia. Peter, Edmund, Lucy, Diggory, Polly, Jill, and Eustace. What's the deal with Susan? I thought she was one of the original ones. Is Lewis down on girls? It's been suggested that he was a misogynist, or he was a male chauvinist, or he didn't like women, or he something wrong with his thinking on gender issues. Jill says, oh, Susan, she's interested in nothing nowadays except nylons and lipsticks and invitations. She always was a jolly sight, too keen on being grown up. So in the Chronicles of Narnia, Lewis is in favor of childlikeness but not childishness. And there's a certain kind of maturity that he wants people to be moving toward, but not the kind of maturity that Susan was moving toward. On the other hand, we can take heart because, as Aslan once said in one of the stories, once a king or queen in Narnia, always a king or queen. So eventually she made it, even though we don't read about it in any of the 7 Chronicles of Narnia. Emeth and humor. And this is the marvel of marvels that he called me, beloved, me who am but as a, Emeth is speaking, who am but as a dog. Eh, what's that? Said one of the dogs. Sir, said Emeth, it is but a fashion of speech which we have in Kalaman. Well, I can't say it's one I like very much, said the dog. Talking dogs, he forgot about that. He doesn't mean any harm, said an older dog. After all, we call our puppies boys when they don't behave properly. So do we, said the first dog, or girls. Gotta be fair here, right? Shh, said the old dog. That's not a nice word to use. Remember where you are. So, a couple of brief notes on planet Narnia once again. The planet is Saturn. Its Greek name is Chronos, which is the Greek word for time. And if you recall from the telling of the plot, Father Time shows up in the story near the end of the story as time is coming to an end. The adjective Saturnine, related to the planet, means gloomy, moody, dark. And the story is rather dark because it's the end of Narnia. The metal is lead, possibly that's where the dwarfs were being taken to. Almost said led to, but that would have been a bad pun, to work in the mines of the Tizrock. And other Saturnine features include the ill chance and Shift's discovery of the lion skin, treachery by the dwarfs, the appearance of Father Time, who according to the discarded image, one of Lewis's lesser-known works, is derived from earlier pictures of Saturn, and ultimately the death of Narnia, a perilous draught that the lip loves not. So here's our benediction just before our concluding quiz. There's the quiz at kahoot.it, either on a browser on your phone or if you've downloaded the app by this time, is going to be our very last thing. So let's do the benediction before we go to Kahoot. Lord, help us to be wiser than Puzzle and more prudent than Tyrion. Help us to be as humble as Puzzle and as noble as Tyrion. Preserve us from false doctrine and the Antichrist. Give us the courage to stand for the right against all odds. Thank you that although all worlds end, no good thing is destroyed. We are eager for the beginning of the real story. So, for the factual quiz, just for fun, we're doing it online. And you can actually do it just from your seat and answer in your head how you would answer the questions that are going to come up. So when you get to kahoot.it and you go to a login screen, you will have to enter the PIN, a PIN, a personal information number that shows up that Jeff is going to give us in just a bit. And you will choose a name, either a real name, if you're self-confident, or a made-up name, take your pick. So first the PIN and then the name. And then the questions will come up on the screen at the top, and at the bottom of the screen there will be 4 choices, all of them color-coded. So you'll read the question and the answers on the screen, and you select the color of the answer on your phone. Top 5 scores, if this happens the way it did last semester in Austin, where we did it with some students here a little while ago, and it only showed the top score. May only show the top score, may show the top 5. We'll see what happens. And either 1 or 5 scores and names will show up at the end. So we are ready to go to Kahoot, and there is the PIN. So if you're at Kahoot, enter 379, and you already got that. Okay, and 37951, and then when that's entered, click go. It'll ask you for a name, whatever name you want to be. So people at distance locations can sign on also and get to Kahoot, enter the PIN, enter your name.
It's not working.
It's
PIN's
not working.
Not working? Okay, do we have any problem with connectivity? We may have to just
It times out.
do I have to enter it? Yeah. Oh, you have a new
There we go.
PIN. Yeah. Well, it's waiting. So I can probably kicking you out, and then you'll have to.
Yeah, that one's good.
Oh, that one's working for people.
4 brains.
Earlier with my phones.
Four brains.
Oh, then it was me.
Yes. 4 brains.
Ah, 16 players.
Accountant.
Okay, now we're ready.
I still have one.
And so, yeah. Pin is working. Hopefully we got the new pin. Okay, 19 people have figured it out, so I think it's working. Are we ready? Oh. Okay, let's go. I think we got 10 questions with artwork from the last one. You get 20 seconds to answer the question. Speed and accuracy are the two ways. Here's the question, and here are the four answers. Pick the color that corresponds to the correct answer.
Too fast? No, we weren't. We were too slow.
So the question is repeated from the previous screen.
Yes.
Okay, 17 people got it right. All right. Lucy. Oh, way to go, Lucy. Second question. The question will be repeated in the next screen when the four choices show up here. Pick your color on your phone. Who are the first two children? You got to select the color on the phone and answer. Okay. A little bit of pressure here. 20 seconds. And our time is up. Okay.
Oh no, drop.
Oh, is this a dwarf? The dwarfs for the dwarfs? What's going on there? Okay.
Either.
The sooner you answer it, the more points you get. And of course, if you answer it incorrectly, you get 0 points. So there are advantages to taking your time.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a close one. A couple of people within 3 points of one another.
Okay. Last. Okay.
You know, it just
Okay.
It was a knock on the door, yes. Okay, we got 5 people in the 4,000 plus point range. You don't dare get one wrong, or you're going to drop out of the top 5.
she got into that movie. We should
Okay, he's from Earth. These are all characters from the story.
That's half our friends right there.
Yeah.
If you get this one wrong,
On one.
pay attention. Okay, Arlene, you got it wrong. We won't ask who got it wrong.
Stays the same.
Okay. Close.
Should have played this one. Oh, yeah. For something.
Just the best, guys.
All
Real Jeep's coming in.
I'm gonna roll the ball down. You don't
Oh, no.
have to that. Who answered that wrong?
We go to the touch.
What?
You got it.
Okay, you were pretty quick with that. You're doing really well here. I must have told the story well.
Oh,
You just,
You've
no,
got to get this
I'm
one.
sure it's the talent in the audience. Okay, that's there. Okay. This is a little harder one.
Yeah. As long as we don't get it wrong.
Okay, which you did really well on that one.
Oh, we're still
There's the top five.
I was thinking
Last
I get tapped.
That's too easy. I should have put a couple of really tough ones in there to make it more difficult for some of these people to stay on top.
Oh, we weren't fast enough.
Me is first, whoever that is. Anybody want to admit to being me?
I'm number 2, actually.
Sean. Okay, Adam. And Ripachi. Wow.
Notice how close they're sitting.
They're cheating. So.
Oh, I'm the one behind. Yes,
Number 4 is King Caspian. Anybody admit, or I think King Caspian's online. Actually. And 4 brains. Do I even want to ask? Is that you, Lee? Collaborative project.
We weren't fast enough though. We weren't fast enough.
Okay, well, we are done. That's the last battle. Our time is up. It's 9 o'clock, a little past 9 o'clock. Thank you very much for participating. Have a little bit of fun at the end with Kahoot. And Lord bless you as you read the Narnia Chronicles and share them with people around you, family members, maybe even give some to some agnostic or non-Christian who needs to be encouraged and captivated by the vision of C.S. Lewis for another world. Because we all believe in another world, right? A spiritual world that we live in right now, as well as a heavenly home that we will enter one day. Let's close with a prayer, shall we? Lord, we thank you for your word, which has made us wise unto salvation through faith in Jesus Christ. We thank you that word powerfully changed the life of C.S. Lewis and has changed our lives. We pray that we might continue to grow in grace, especially as we spend time in your word, but that we are encouraged, challenged, lifted up by imaginative literature such as that which we've been privileged to study these last few weeks. All this we pray in the name of Jesus and to the glory of our Father. Amen.
I'll say thanks one more time. He's our visiting professor here all semester long, and so we just get a peek at him here, but we really appreciate you, and Cheryl also for being here with us, braving this bitter cold day and the worst outdoor weather. But also thanks to all of you, of course, Ellen and Cindy and yep. Okay. Yep. Thank you. And next fall, we are still working on the theme, the title, but we will be offering another course again in the fall and a year from now in the spring. We would welcome your input. If you have thoughts or ideas or something that you would like to study, we'll consider that and see if we can bring that out to you. It's our goal to serve the church. That's why we're here. So we pray that you have a safe trip back home, and see you in Narnia or around this world first. Thank you.